But there's a whole different argument to be had here. And that is, what about the planet? So you've heard me say up until now that if we're talking just about the epidemiologic evidence related directly to human health, we need to stay on a basic theme of eating. But I don't think that's the only lens we should be looking through. Personally, I think we need to be looking through three lenses. What does food and diet do directly to our health? Very important. And that generates a pretty clearly defined answer. What does our diet mean for how we treat our fellow creatures? You heard my dogs bark in the background. I have two dogs. I have a horse. I was fortunate to have some time to ride earlier today. They're my friends. I love them. Well, animals just like them, just as sentient, just as sensitive, just as intelligent, are food routinely. And not just food, because, if you hunt, an animal can be your food. But they're tortured for a lifetime before they become food. That's got to matter. I don't think anyone with a conscience should be okay with cruelty, gratuitous cruelty on the menu. And factory farming of animals engenders gratuitous cruelty at a horrific scale. I look through that lens. I can't help but look through that lens. And my eyes were first opened to this space by John Robbins when I read The Food Revolution. You could probably all point to a source that raised our consciousness. But once you know, this is something you can't unknow, and I don't think any decent person can pretend it doesn't matter. And then there's the third issue, and that's what was featured in this recent article in The Atlantic. Our diets are cooking the planet, and the single best thing we can do to preserve biodiversity, stop raising the Amazon and the rainforest in Borneo and on it goes, is stop eating meat, in particular beef. Beef is the reason that places like this, beautiful places, this is in the Amazon basin, are transformed into this so that we clear the way to do this, graze cattle, so that we can make more hamburgers and feed the world's appetite for beef. So, it's all too easy to blame Brazil's crazy president for the fact that the Amazon keeps burning. It's the global appetite for beef. If there weren't a demand, there would be no supply, and they'd leave those magnificent rainforest trees standing. But they're being cut down because people are greedy, and they always pursue quick gratification and money. And so the demand is crucial. It's the global demand for beef. So as I said earlier in the talk, the privilege of being in front of you here now is that you are amplifiers. We're all amplifiers of one another when we reach one another, when we persuade one another. It is our job to convey that to people who otherwise would not have heard it. And every one of us can do that. Anytime we are inspired, we have the opportunity to pay it forward. And I ask you to do that. We must raise awareness that, look, maybe you like meat, and maybe you're not worried about its effects on your health, but you've got to care about a world where there is no Amazon rainforest. How can you not care? It's really one of the crown jewels of this magnificent planet. You don't want to be the reason that it's gone, that future generations just look back at that as a historical thing that was burned up, taken for granted. So this is the reason. It's not Bolsonaro. Yeah, he's no help, the president of Brazil. It's beef. And so when I did this interview for NPR some years ago, How Bad Really Is Red Meat, I talked a bit about animal protein, saturated fat, the usual things you'll be hearing about from other speakers at this conference. And I said, I look at this through three lenses: direct effects on human health, what we know and how we know it, what it means in terms of how we treat our fellow creatures, domestic creatures, and then what it means for every natural wild thing in the world. And that is crucially important. In that context, and I don't know how all of you feel about the sort of the new age of meat-free diets, but it's sort of being taken over by high tech, right? And we're going to have more and more of these offerings. But just to single out the ones that are best known, we have Beyond and we have Impossible, so plant-based meat alternatives. I did a piece for Medium a year or so ago, noting that these are ultra-processed foods. There's no question about that, to borrow from Carlos Montero and the NOVA scale. which is a way to rate how processed foods are. These are ultra processed. So they may not be that much better for human health. I mean, if you go from a highly processed meat to a highly processed plant alternative, it's probably a little better, but maybe it's mostly a lateral move for your health. But I don't really care, because there is no health without a planet to live on. There are no healthy people on a ruined, inhospitable planet. And I care about the health of creatures other than ourselves anyway. So if you factor all that in, and this is the ironic part of talking about plant-based meat, I have to quote Meatloaf: 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So if we look at direct human health effects, maybe better, maybe not. We really don't know yet. If we look at kinder, gentler treatment for our fellow creatures, hell yeah. And lesser impact on the planet in terms of water utilization, greenhouse gas emissions, climate change, et cetera, hell yeah. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So I like these, not for myself. I have no interest in them. I really like to eat plants. So, I don't want my fake plant burger to bleed. I'll take my wife's vegan burgers any day. By the way, you're looking for the best vegan burger recipes on the planet, go to Cuisinicity. It's Cuisine City, but with an I in the middle, Cuisinicity. This is my wife, Catherine's free recipe website. And just type into the search box, vegan burgers. And a recipe for the bun, and she has videos to show you how to make them. Easy to make. They're the best. I mean, incredible texture. But for people who actually like to eat plants, they're fantastic. For people who are not willing to eat plants, that's the beauty of Beyond Impossible and all the rest, because these are gateway drugs. I mean, the idea is, okay, so people who are just obligate carnivores, they refuse to, catch this train because they really like meat. They're never going to be converted because they like meat too much. Give them something that tastes like meat but isn't cruel to other creatures and isn't devastating the environment, and they'll shrug their shoulders and say, yeah, okay, feels like meat, tastes like meat, this'll do. And frankly, there are lots of people like that, who are decent and would rather not have cruelty on the menu and would rather not be the reason the Amazon's burned down, but really like to eat meat. Well, let's create a way for them to move in the right direction. And I think this technology-based advance does exactly that. So I am not a personal fan. I'm not interested. I don't need these products, but I'm a supporter, because I think the goal here is to win over people who would otherwise not be part of this movement. And for us to do what needs doing, this can't be a limited movement. This can't just be us. And let's see, how many of us are here? There are 360 of us here right now. Nice. We need 360 million, and then that's not enough. We need 3.6 billion, and then maybe that's not enough. We need everybody in on this. And so every way we can move people in the right direction is a good way. Every way we can reduce our environmental footprint, good. Every way we can be kinder and gentler to our fellow creatures, good. And then, let this be a gateway so people get used to eating plant-based burgers that bleed, and then maybe ultimately they can actually learn to love beans and lentils and not need these ultra-processed products. But let's start somewhere. You may hear from other speakers differences about this. I am very confident. I think this is eminently defensible based on anatomy, physiology, and the history of our kind, evolutionary biology. We're constitutional omnivores, but that's not an obligation of any kind. Omnivores have choices, and our choices should be informed. So it really doesn't matter if our Stone Age ancestors hunt animals and ate them. We can't be Stone Age hunters. Stone Age hunters lived in a great big empty world where all animals were wild animals, with the exception of maybe the earliest examples of domesticated wolves turned into something like dogs. But other than that, all animals were wild. They lived free. Animals ate other animals, and our kind of animal may have done that periodically too. It has nothing whatever to do with mass production of factory farmed animals. Nothing, whatever, night and day. So, if you tell me, no, I want to eat meat because, periodically I'm going to take a bow and arrow and go hunt for antelope or deer, is that good or bad for you? Well, honestly, we don't have a study to compare an optimal plant-based diet with some venison versus an optimal plant-exclusive diet. So, if someone tells you, we know for sure that it's better to have the plant-based diet without the venison, that's just preference. And I may prefer that too. I love deer. I can't imagine shooting one with anything, bow and arrow, gun. So I prefer that too. But I try very hard never to substitute my preference for the facts. The facts are things we know. The preferences are things we want. So I would rather people not hunt deer and antelope. But, honestly, we don't know. And if you're interacting with people who favor a paleo diet, you have to be prepared, to have a conversation that's based on what they know, what we know. And then, yeah, but here's why I would prefer we go a different way. But again, the simple fact is that Stone Age foragers needed enough space so that those wild animals all had a place to live. Whatever portion of the diet was made up of animal foods, and that's very much debated in the literature on paleoanthropology, it was probably much smaller than most people think. But I've done the math. I did this in a Huffington Post piece some years ago. For the modern population of Homo sapiens to live anything remotely like our Stone Age ancestors, we would need 15 times the surface area of Earth. And I mean all of Earth. I mean the oceans, the polar ice caps, the Sahara Desert. It's absurd. So this conversation is just silly. All that we need to know from our Stone Age experiences, we are omnivores, we have choices, we should make good ones. And the best choice we can make is a beautiful Grand Confluence, where we improve diet quality for the sake of our health and the health of people we love, and for every other creature on the planet and the planet itself. And we are very fortunate, because among the things we know is that objective measures of diet quality and measures of environmental impact move together. That need not have been the case. If we were lions and had to eat meat because we were not adapted to eat anything else, and the world was being ruined from meat consumption, we'd have a real dilemma. We can either eat the way that our bodies need, or we can take care of our planet, but we can't do both. We can do both. We need plant predominant diets. We thrive on plant exclusive diets. And the more we move in that direction, the better it is for all creatures, great and small, and this beautiful planet. We're fortunate. We have the opportunity for this Grand Confluence. That's the right choice. And this is a message that's made very clear in the seminal Eat Lancet Commission on Food, Planet, and Health. This report's available for you online. So when you refer back to these slides, this is a reference you may want to follow up on. And when I think about a Grand Confluence, I am a physician. I'm thinking about adding years to lives, life to years. I care about people, but I want there to be an Amazon for my children and grandchildren and their grandchildren. It is a gem of the planet. I want there to be a rainforest in Borneo for orangutans to climb. I want cruelty to animals as smart and sensitive as the family dog to stop. And I want there to be aquifers preserved so that thirsty people can drink. I want these things. They matter.